Welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be speaking about the Dahomey Kingdom. This topic is part of our effort to understand the West African history in the 19th century. So we'll be focusing on the Dahomey Kingdom in this section. The Dahomey Kingdom was established by the Fon people, also known as the Fon or simply the Dahomey. The Fon are the largest ethnic group in the present day Benin Republic. The Kingdom of Dahomey existed from 1500 to 1900. It was located in the present southern part of Benin Republic in West Africa. The Dahomey Kingdom flourished in the 18th and the 19th century, where the kingdom paid tribute to the old kingdom of Oyo, known as the Oyo Empire, which reached its zenith of its power in 1740 and started declining at the beginning of the 19th century. It was incorporated into the French protectorate between 1894 and 1904. The Kingdom of Dahomey was an important power in West Africa sub-region between the 18th and the 19th centuries. While it possessed a very lucrative and strong economy that was built mainly on conquest, expansion, and the transatlantic slave trade. So the Dahomey Kingdom was one of the most prominent and most sophisticated pre-colonial political entity in West Africa. The 1720s was particularly a major period of power for the Dahomey Kingdom. It was during this time that the kingdom conquered the coastal kingdoms of Alada and Ouidah, and this actually provided the opportunity for expansion. Dahomey kings, for instance, were called Ahosu in the Fon language. It was Wedaja or Ubeja ruling between 1645 to 1685, who molded Dahomey Kingdom into powerful states that it eventually became by the 19th century. The political power of the kings of Dahomey began to grow under the reign of Wedaja, who ruled from 1645 to 1685. The kingdom reached its height under the rulership of King Gezo, however, before its power was effectively checked by the British and finally by the growing influence of the French. So it was under the Gezo that the power and the influence enjoyed by this pre-colonial West African state dwindled. The king was assisted in terms of political administration of the kingdom. The Dahomey king was assisted in making important decisions by an important assembly of kings close who were his close relations. So it operated a principle of a democratic and decentralized system of political administration. The Dahomey Kingdom, for instance, practiced an absolute monarchical system of government. The king was the sole authority ruler whose decision and command must be obeyed in the kingdom. The Dahomey society was also divided into rigid classes, headed by the royal family. Those were followed by the commoners and the slaves. The slaves usually were used as articles by the ruling class, and by the commoners who could afford to keep them in most situations. In Dahomey Kingdom, slaves were eventually sold, of course, if needed. So the transatlantic slavery was also an integral component of the history of the Dahomey Kingdom, like every other West African pre-colonial entity. The Dahomey Kingdom also plays importance on women in the social and political structure of the kingdom. Women, for instance, constituted an important part of the army, and as earlier noted, they were known as the Amazon. The Dahomey women who in the army were known as the Amazon. This was one of the most the Amazon was one of the most sophisticated military formation in pre-colonial West African history. They were also appointed into key political offices alongside their male counterparts to monitor activities in the kingdom and to report to the king. So also women were also used as royal bodyguards when they were at war in the kingdom. After the fall of Oyo Empire, Dahomey grew mightily into an enviable regional power. It controlled the coast, after defeating the kingdom of Wida, which is known as Kwida or Alada. Later on, the Dahomey kingdom shifted its attention to the old Yoruba state of Abeokuta in the 19th century and engaged in a series of war with it over the control of trade. However, the presence of British missionaries and navy in Abeokuta helped to prevent Abeokuta from being conquered by Dahomey. As a matter of fact, it was the Abeokuta affairs that contributed tremendously to the collapse of the Dahomey kingdom. Before the rise of Dahomey kingdom, as it has been noted, Alada and Wida kingdoms were very powerful and dominated the Atlantic coast. They had contact with Portuguese as early as 15th century and traded significantly with them. Dahomey at this point was first growing around the Dahomey plateau. No evidence suggests that the area was initially settled in and occupied by a number of small tribes, commonly known as Gederi. However, they could muster enough influence at the time because of lack of resources and access on important trade routes in the region. According to oral tradition, Du Akins or Dokonu established the Dahomey Palace in Dahomey in the early 1600 after he had defeated Gederi chiefs over issues of land expansion. In this case, Wedaja, the son of Dokonu, was the one who strengthened the kingdom and ensured its expansion during his reign in 1645 up to 1685. He built the royal palace in Dahomey and began raiding and taking over towns outside Dahomey kingdom. However, significant expansion took place under Wedaja's grandson, King Agaja, from 1718. It was King Agaja who stopped Dahomey from being conquered by Alada and began to increase military activity in the region in 1724. It is also important to know that in a series of events that happened too quickly, King Agaja was able to conquer and took Alada kingdom and made it his capital instead of Dahomey. In 1727, he set his eye on Wida and also took the city. Dahomey at this time had become popular as a kingdom with an army of female soldiers dressed in male apparel or clothes. The Dahomey female army were popularly known as the Dahomey Amazon or Memo, meaning our mothers. In 1729, the Dahomey kingdom also warred with the Oyo Empire, which had control over the kingdoms of Dahomey and Alada and Wida. King Agaja defeated Alada and Wida and sought to free itself from the influence of the old Oyo Empire as a result of its rising political influence in the region. So the war ended in 1730 with Dahomey not being able to free itself from the control and influence of the Oyo Empire. But Dahomey retained local control and was allowed to retain the expansion it had achieved from 1718. Subsequently, the power of the Oyo Empire over Dahomey, for which Dahomey paid tribute to Oyo Empire, did not end until 1823. Under King Gezo, one Brazilian slave trader, Francisco Felix Souza, helped Gezo to overthrow his elder brother, Anderson. He also helped Gezo to organize armies against Oyo and brought an end to the tribute payments to Oyo Empire. So Dahomey's freedom from Oyo Empire made it become a great power until 1852. But in 1852, the British Navy began to blockade the shops involved in the slave trade business, and this adversely affected the Dahomey economy. King Gezo had rejected the effort of a lot of diplomats in this regard sent by Britain, appealing to him to stop the slave trade. This was because he was worried about the political consequences that would follow if he stopped the slave trade. Just like King Kosoko of Lagos, the fear of the repercussion of relinquishing his interest in the slave trade probably caused the British to intervene in his kingdom. However, to the west of Dahomey kingdom was also founded a city in 1825 called Abeokuta, which was so pivotal to the British interest. Abeokuta, a Yoruba settlement, grew quickly in importance and served as a safe haven for people running away, from slave raiders from Dahomey. The rise of Abeokuta, however, threatened the position of Dahomey, as a slave trading kingdom considerably. The British supported and helped in the stability of Abeokuta as a city and as a safe haven for those fleeing the slave trade. In 1844, Dahomey went to war with Abeokuta. However, with the help of the British, Abeokuta defeated Dahomey victoriously. The victory of Abeokuta dealt a huge blow to the dominance of Dahomey in the region. In this case, King Gezo continually faced pressure from Britain, similarly to what happened to King Kosoko in Lagos. The British played a very conspiratorial and decisive role in bringing down the influence of Dahomey, particularly given his refusal of the king in relinquishing his interest in the slave trade. He then began to source alternatives to the slave trade by developing and expanding the palm oil trade in the area. The British encouraged Gezo on palm oil trade, but Francisco de Souza, the Brazilian slave merchant and widower, was against it because he favored the slave trade. Eventually, de Souza accepted a treaty, an agreement with the British, ending the slave trade from Dahomey in 1852. He also suspended a large scale of military campaign and human sacrifice in the kingdom. However, he resumed the slave trading and large scale military exercise in 1857 and 1858 briefly as a result of political pressure on him. Gezo was subsequently assassinated by those suspected to be Abeokuta snipers, and his assassination resulted in another large-scale war in 1864. By 1894, France had occupied and colonized Dahomey and other areas around it until 1960, when it gained independence as a modern state. In 1975, the name of the kingdom was changed from Republic of Dahomey to the Benin Republic. So what are the factors that actually aided the rise and fall of Dahomey? So we'll highlight a few factors that contributed to the rise and to the fall of Dahomey. First is that the life of the Dahomey kingdom, as we have seen before, spanned about 300 years. So the Dahomey kingdom, like the Oyo Empire, was one of the most powerful political entity in West Africa between 1500 up to the 19th century. The kingdom was near the coast, unlike the Oyo Empire, the Songhai or the Mali Empire, which were inland kingdoms. So this gave a lot of impetus to the kingdom to rise, to engage in Atlantic trade with the Europeans. A number of factors contributed to the expansion of the kingdom. Some of them are as follow. It was a coastal kingdom, which we have noted. Dahomey was a coastal kingdom overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. This actually aided its rise. It was not located on the hinterland of West Africa, so it had enough space to develop and to expand on its own. Also is that the kingdom focused more on trading with European merchants, especially in slaves. So what are the major weaknesses that led to the, of course, and all of that? So in addition to the factors that aided the rise of Dahomey kingdom was the weakness and collapse of the Oyo Empire. Towards the middle of the 19th century, the Oyo Empire had become considerably weak because of its loss of Ilorin, then the internal conflict, especially succession war and disunity. In this case, King Gezo of Dahomey capitalized on this weakness to attack the Oyo Empire and to defeat it. So this also contributed to the rise of the Dahomey kingdom. Again, the defeat of Oyo gave more power to Dahomey and raised its status in West Africa. Coupled with this was the strong army of Dahomey. The Dahomey kingdom had a strong army. The kingdom made military strength and the expansion of its territory its prime objective, especially under King Gezo. It had a strong military body aided by very strong female soldiers known as Dahomey Amazons. As a result of its strong army and the taste for expansion, it was able to muzzle itself to power and supremacy over all kingdoms and tribes around it. These were some of the factors that contributed to it, right? Of course, this happened especially during the reign of Wedbaja, Agaja, and Gezo, as I've noted. Another point is that Dahomey controlled the coastal trade. The control of the coastal trade, led to the rise of Dahomey, as Alfred Mackinder has noted, in one of his work. He who rules the world island rules the world heartland, and he who rules the world heartland rules the world. The Dahomey economy prospered through increased slave trade, especially along the coast of West Africa. The kingdom had slave traders, who worked tirelessly to capture many people, from various parts of West Africa and traded them across the Atlantic. No other kingdom around the West African coast, contested control of the slave trade with Dahomey. It was one of the most, prominent, political entity that, engaged, prosperously in the transatlantic slave trade. Dahomey became so prosperous from the slave trade to the point that King Gezo refused to stop the trade despite many diplomatic efforts, from Britain to get him to stop dealing in slaves. Also is the political stability. There was relative political stability in the kingdom. Unlike the kingdoms and empires that existed before Dahomey kingdom, Dahomey was relatively, stable without much internal conflict as Oyo and other, West African political society. The political structure of Dahomey kingdom was such that the king ruled absolutely, and the king, though was surrounded, he surrounded himself with commoners who would not be able to dethrone him, or rebel against his authority, unlike the case in other pre-colonial, societies. Also, so let's look at the factors that led to the fall of the Dahomey kingdom. Like other kingdoms and empire, the Dahomey kingdom soon reached its peak and crumbled. So the law of gravity actually, came in the 19th century. The kingdom reached its peak under the rulership of King Gezo, who defeated the Oyo Empire. However, a number of factors, which we are going to outline, led to its collapse. The resistance of King Gezo to ending the slave trade was one of the major cause of the decline of the kingdom. Towards the 19th century, the British government, as we have noted, made attempt to stop the slave trade, just as they did in Lagos. They sent diplomatic envoys, special representative to Dahomey to meet, King Gezo to persuade him to stop, the slave trade. Gezo resisted them, citing, imminent political consequences at home if he agreed to stop the slave trade. His resistance, however, led, the British, to intervene in the political affairs of his kingdom. So there was the issue of external targets and victimization of, slave traders and in the area. This further weakened the position of the, kingdom. Also was the British blockade of the Dahomey port, which is also connected to the, refusal to end the slave trade. In 1852, the British blockaded Dahomey port and prevented the kingdom from carrying out slave exports, just as they did to King Kosoko at the same time. This had serious consequences, for the economy of Dahomey. The blockade, particularly coupled with the internal pressure, forced King Gezo to sign a treaty with the British, to stop the slave trade. And this act of bowing to pressure by the king contributed to the collapse of the kingdom, because, it reduced the influence of the king. There was also the establishment and development of Abeokuta, which we have mentioned. In 1825, a new city, known as Abeokuta, was founded by fleeing refugees from the crumbling Oyo Empire. Others were those running from slave traders from Dahomey, while some were, slave returnees from, overseas. So this, was one of the situations that actually contributed to the rise of Abeokuta, led to the decline of Dahomey. This was bad. It was the rise of Abeokuta was a bad business for Dahomey, as the British encouraged and helped Abeokuta to develop. Soon, Dahomey went to war, with Abeokuta, because of the competition, which it, posed, to the pre-colonial powerful state Dahomey. So this event eventually weakened the Dahomey kingdom. At this time, the British had begun to empower Abeokuta to rival Dahomey. Of course, there is also another factor: the French conquest and occupation of Dahomey. In 1892, Dahomey fought against French forces, in which France defeated Dahomey and occupied it in 1894. From 1894, therefore, Dahomey became a French colony until 1960, when he signed a treaty with it when he gained independence. There is also the rise of Dahomey Kingdom, which we have discussed. So in this class, we have examined the factors that led to the rise and to the fall of Dahomey Kingdom in the 19th century. Subsequently, in our next class, we'll be looking at the Fulani Jihad in the 19th century. Thank you.